This is our first episode called Did You Know? Each week we'll be posting a different episode where we'll list 10 different serial killer facts, and then later on in the video we're going to discuss each serial killer in a little bit more detail. Mary Bell killed her first victim around age 10, and the second a few months later. She left notes about the killing and even visited the mothers of the boys she killed, asking if they were sad that their sons were dead. BTK actually makes people fill out an application to write him in prison. Ted Bundy was actively involved in politics, and there was talk that he may one day become the governor of Washington. Serial killer Anna Marie Hahn was executed in 1938 in the electric chair, and the first woman to be executed in Ohio's electric chair. Bobbie Sue Terrell, who was the angel of death, had a long history of self-injury and mental illness before she was charged in the 1984 deaths of 4 patients in her care, and reportedly stabbed herself in her vagina with scissors. H. Holmes sometimes sold the skeletons of his victims to medical schools. Robert Pickton ground up his victims and fed them to the pigs on his farm. Joe Metheny, aka the cannibal, would mix the flesh of his victims with animal meat and sell it as burgers at his food stand. Albert Fish once wrote a letter to one of his victims' parents describing how tasty her body was. Richard Chase would capture small animals and devour them raw, sometimes blending the corpses with Coca-Cola to make a milkshake. On May 25, 1968, the day after her 11th birthday, Mary Bell strangled 4-year-old Martin Brown to death in an abandoned house. She and a friend, Norma Joyce Bell, which is no relation, broke into a nursery afterwards and left notes admitting Mary's guilt. 2 months later, Mary, along with Norma, strangled 3-year-old Brian Howe to death. Mary later returned to the scene to carve an M in the child's stomach. She also used a pair of scissors to cut his hair and mutilate his penis. Mary's mother, Betty Bell, was a prostitute, and she often left Mary alone while she worked. More than once, Betty had tried to kill her child, feeding her pills as treats. Mary says from the age of 4, her mother forced her to engage in sexual acts with men. The 2 girls were charged with 2 counts of manslaughter. Norma was acquitted, but Mary was given an indefinite sentence. After her conviction, Betty Bell told lies about Mary to the media for money. Dennis Rader, whose full name is Dennis Lynn Rader, went by the name BTK or BTK Killer. He was born March 9, 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas. He was a serial killer who murdered 10 people over a span of 3 decades before his arrest and confession in 2005. He called himself BTK because he bound, tortured, and killed his victims. American serial killer and rapist Ted Bundy was one of the most notorious criminals of the late 20th century, known to have killed at least 36 women in the 1970s. He was executed in the electric chair in 1989. Anna Marie Hahn was a female serial killer who became the first woman ever to be executed in Ohio, after it was confirmed that she poisoned 5 old men to death in order to gain their estates through fraudulently produced wills or by raiding their bank accounts. All the way up until the end of her execution, slated for December 7, 1938, Anna believed the state of Ohio would not put a woman to death and her sentence would be commuted. She was wrong. As they were strapping her into the electric chair, it dawned on her that she was going to die, and in her last words, she pleaded with the warden to save her life. Bobbie Sue Terrell is a Pinellas County nurse who was the night supervisor when 12 of her patients at a St. Petersburg nursing home fell ill and died in 1984. She admitted injecting elderly patients in her care with fatal doses of insulin. She was charged with killing 4 and almost killing a 5th. In 1861, Herman Webster Mudget was born in New Hampshire. It's said that at an early age he was fascinated with skeletons and soon became obsessed with death. It may have been this interest that led him to pursue medicine. After graduating high school at 16, Mudget changed his name to Henry Howard Holmes and later in life would be known as H. H. Holmes. Holmes studied medicine at a small school in Vermont before being accepted into the University of Michigan Medical School. While enrolled in medical school, Holmes stole cadavers from the laboratory, burned or disfigured them, and then planted the bodies, making it look as if they had been killed in an accident. The scandal behind it was that Holmes would take out insurance policies on these people before planting the bodies and would collect money once the bodies were discovered. Robert William Willy Pickton was born on October 26, 1949, in British Columbia, Canada. He's a former pig farmer and serial killer convicted of the second-degree murders of 6 women. He's also charged in the deaths of an additional 20 women, many of them prostitutes and drug users from Vancouver's downtown east side. And it has been said that he fed many of the victims to his pigs on the farm. In December 2007, he was sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole for 25 years, the longest sentence available under Canadian law for murder. Joseph Roy Metheny, also known as the Cannibal, was born on March 2, 1955 in Baltimore, Maryland. He confessed to police that he was a serial killer and he had killed up to 13 people. However, sufficient evidence was only found to convict him for 2 murders. His victims were heavily involved with alcohol and addictive hard drugs, as was Metheny himself, and the killings also involved brutal sexual assaults. Hamilton Howard Albert Fish was born on May 19, 1870 in Washington, D.C. He was an American serial killer, a child rapist, and a cannibal. He was also known as the Gray Man, the Werewolf of Wisteria, the Brooklyn Vampire, the Moon Maniac, and the Boogeyman. Richard Trenton Chase was born on May 23, 1950 in California. He was an American serial killer, rapist, cannibal, and necrophile. He killed 6 people in a span of a month in Sacramento, California. He was nicknamed the Vampire of Sacramento because he drank his victims' blood and cannibalized their remains. Thank you for watching, and if you like our content, please hit the like, subscribe, and the bell so that you get notifications when we have new videos. Join us next week for another edition of Did You Know?